Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. Got some historical NHL news to discuss. Alex Ovechkin reaches number 800. A few other things, but we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So some of us woke up. Some of us may have been up at the time, saw the Carlos Correa contract, 13 years, $350 million. I think this is the contract that is going to make baseball rethink everything in like 4 or 5 years. I think this is the one that goes way over the canyon. And I think even the Giants at some point are going to be like, wow, we got way over competitive with what the market was. And
are there outs in this deal, or is it a straight?
They haven't talked about any. Mm-hmm. So it's the richest contract ever for an infielder, which is fine. But, at this point, he's a 20 homer, 70 RBI guy. Right. Like, I get he's a great fielder, and I get that he is a good postseason performer. He's excellent in the postseason. But at the end of the day, even if you take away the 13 years and you make it 8 years, it's still not worth it. Like, I just don't know what they were thinking. I would have offered Dansby Swanson a lot less and probably gotten him. Like, there's not that much difference between Carlos Correa and Dansby Swanson. That's the weird thing about all of this.
I know what they were thinking, Kev. They were thinking we fell short on Judge. This is like San Diego. We fell short on Trey Turner. We fell short on we supposedly were in on Judge. So let's throw a boatload of cash at Xander Bogaerts. San Francisco, we lost on Judge. We lost on a couple other people. We're probably not re-signing Rodon. So let's throw a boatload of money at Carlos Correa. And I agree with what Russ says. He's a good player, but he's not a 30+ million, 13-year contract. And he's right. It's getting to the point of ridiculousness that the owners are going to have to crack down on in some way.
Yeah, I mean, it's their money; they can spend when they want. I think you're right on. I think this is the overpayment for the consolation prize. You didn't get the big one, so you pay. What is the guy worth? Whatever he can get, and this is what he could get. There is an argument to be made. With all the analytics that we have in all sports, is the fact that it's the comparison to the average. And I think shortstop is one of those positions where, there's a huge difference between getting one of the premium guys, and he's in that group, and then getting a guy who's just pretty good. And I think that's what they're thinking, that, he's a difference maker because – at that position now we have a guy that helps in a variety of different ways. But I don't know. It's we've reached the point now. I saw someone said that it doesn't matter what teams pay, in the grand scheme of things. Like he said, we all complain about what guys are making, but what does it really matter to us? As long as the team.
Well, it matters what you pay in cable package. It matters what you pay at the ballpark. It matters how much you pay for parking.
Yeah, but as the guy pointed out, we have total control over that. We just choose not to exercise that.
Well, if fans do that, yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Well, that's what he said. I mean, if you don't like what they're doing, you could simply not go. He said, I'm a huge fan. And he goes, I think what I spend, the guy that wrote this said, I think what I spend on sports is negligible. He said, I watch all my sports on television. Right. I don't buy jerseys. He said, I'm 50 years old. So he said, I don't do any of that stuff. So it doesn't cost me a cent.
A couple things for me. It's like, I live in Buffalo. We don't have a Major League Baseball team, but I usually go to a couple games in Toronto. The prices are, I think fairly reasonable. I'm not going to sit down low and spend $100 for a seat. I'll sit up on the 500 level for $25 or whatever. And I go to a Yankee game once a year. So does it matter that I'm paying $45 for parking and $10 for a foot-long Hebrew National kosher beef hot dog or garlic fries? No. But for somebody who wants to go to 81 games, forget it. I mean, the prices are obscene. You're probably bringing your own food to the ballpark, and you're parking, and you're taking the subway, and then even then it's expensive. So I think the prices are going to be out of whack. And like Russ has said before, they're going to pass this on to the fans. Of course they are.
But again, I mean, it's no different than any other economic.
No, that's how all businesses do it.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's just whatever it is that we want. I mean, we choose, how we furnish our home. what car we buy. You make economic decisions, and it's the same sort of thing. We think new car prices are too high, or the cost of the only thing that I've run across that seems incredibly reasonable to me is televisions. Like, you can buy a gigantic television now for next to nothing, and I think a lot of us, you talk about the best entertainment value, it's the purchase of a television.
Yeah, you can buy a 65-inch Sony or a 65-inch Samsung at Target for $700, and that's
that's true. The one thing I want to mention, though, is we question baseball is supposed to be steeped in analytics, and as far as I could tell, there's like one 35-year-old shortstop in baseball last year, and that was Brandon Crawford. Otherwise, nobody that old plays shortstop anymore. So just how many years do they think Correa's going to play shortstop? And that's where his value is. That's the other crazy part of this equation.
Well, that's why. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say too, and that's what really, like, the value of these contracts is even more outrageous than you think, because now when you're buying the guy, you're factoring in that you're paying for years where you won't use him, that he's not going to be of value to you. We're seeing that. It used to be 1 or 2 in sports. Now we're getting to the point where it's going to be 3, 4, 5 for some players. No, and you start to see that in hockey, where you just factor in order to get that AAV down, you'll give them more years, knowing that you're not going to be, that they're not going to produce at a high level at those, if they produce at all. So
right. That's why, just quickly, we'll finish off on baseball here, and then Kevin had something to talk about. It made no sense of the interest that the Mets had in Correa, because they already have a really great expensive shortstop in Lindor. So are they going to play him at third base? They
would have played him at third, but I think that was to placate Lindor because that's his friend. I think they said, "Yeah, we'll be in on it." Wink, wink, and
Yeah. Now, and there's talk, and it's being panned. It's being written off as just clickbait, but there's talk about the Yankees trying to trade for Fernando Tatis Jr. because he's sort of on the outs in San Diego. And one of the things that they were pointing at is, well, he's cost controlled. Yeah, at $28 million for 12 years. So I don't know how much cost.
I wouldn't want him in New York based on things he's done already.
Yes.
I would stay far, far away. I would.
And maybe
New York could be a bad place for him.
And Kev, maybe the smart team out there, although I'm wondering what the hell they're doing, is the Boston Red Sox, because they haven't. Now they lost out on Bogarts. They wanted to bring him back. They didn't bid on Correa. There are no big hitters that I can see out there right now that they could. And maybe they think that they're 2 or 3 years away. So why waste your money? But they're watching all these other guys sign, and they're not doing a damn thing.
I know. Yeah. And there are certain teams that I think just have to dive into that pool, and the Red Sox are among them, because in Major League Baseball, you don't keep up with the Joneses, you keep up with the Yankees.
Yeah, their fan base is indifferent right now. They don't know what they're doing. I don't blame them.
Yeah, I don't either. So I don't know. Baseball is one of my favorite sports, so I love watching it. But one thing that's happened there, like the luxury tax system does not create a competitive environment.
No, it's actually created a greater divide, and the teams up at the top don't want to give the teams at the bottom that money. That's why a lot of them try and stay as close to the luxury tax threshold as they can, because they don't want to pass on that money.
And they almost resent giving that money to those teams. And basically those teams are like the Kansas City Athletics now. They're feeder teams for the big market teams like the Pirates. They'll end up trading Brian Reynolds, or Oakland trade Sean Murphy. When they get close to being good, instead of keeping these guys, they trade them off. Kev, you wanted to bring up something about Mike Leach?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, sometimes in sports, you end up, a name, a little bit about the person, but you don't know a whole lot. And Mike Leach is just one of those names that I've known from college football. It seems like his mouth occasionally got him in trouble. He spoke his mind. I never really had a either positive or negative attitude toward him. But since he's passed away, and you've read like the tributes, and you could tell the difference between a heartfelt tribute and someone who's just trying to say something nice about someone who passed away. And I'm really kind of amazed that this Mike Leach was probably a guy that I should have paid attention to. That he was an interesting guy who had a lot to say and had a lot of opinions, but a lot of people liked him. So anyway, I just thought it was kind of interesting that it's a name that we all heard, but I knew very little about him. It turns out I missed something by not paying attention to him.
Okay, let's get started. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, December 14th, 2022.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen.
And I'm Michael Agello, and I can say the date in the right order. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Rusty, you have to watch yesterday's show to understand.
Oh, okay.
Let's start with the big news of the day. Alexander Ovechkin now is the third player in NHL history to reach the 800 goal mark. Wayne Gretzky at 893, Gordie Howe at 801, and now Alex Ovechkin at 800. He scores a hat trick against the Chicago Blackhawks last night to reach that mark. And first of all, I have to say, the kid that he gave that stick to, boy, put that thing in a bank and sell that one, because that's gonna make you a ton of money. You could probably pay for your college tuition if they're selling that stick. He gave a kid wearing a Capitals jersey the stick as he was walking off the ice, and I'm like, and he was very happy. And I'm like, his parents better make sure they lock that thing up. But Kev, I mean, this is a guy that we've tracked for years. He's one of the best. I mean, obviously one of the best scorers of all time. But in the middle of his career, he started to dip a little bit, and he got into the 30-goal area, and everybody thought, okay, he's going to run out of gas. And now, in the second half of his career, he's just put the pedal to the metal. And I think it's a matter of when that he catches Gretzky.
Yeah. What I appreciated about the reaching 800 is, he did it with a little bit of flair with a hat trick.
Yep.
Getting that 800, and we really didn't expect anything less from him. He's always been kind of a shock and all type offensive guy, and I don't know whether people really appreciate the magnitude of where these guys are. These guys being Howe and Gretzky, reaching 800 goals. Like if you went 20 years and averaged 40 goals per season just to get to 800, that's remarkable when you think about it. And he's got 9 50-goal seasons. He's on a pace for 53 goals this year. Historically, he's gotten goals in bunches. Like, how many times has he ended the season with 22 goals in 20 games, or 19 goals in 20 games? And he's got 7 in his last 4 in this one. That's the kind of stuff we expect from Ovechkin. And to be 37, I think that's what he is, and to be playing at this level and to create this. And I agree with you, Mike. I mean, I think 24-25 would be the projection, provided he doesn't get hurt or doesn't have any drop off. We should see it at the start. And we would have all guessed that record was unbreakable. And,
oh yeah.
And now, I'd say that once he breaks it, it's unbreakable again. Nobody's catching.
Well, we don't know how the game will change. I'm not sure if I'm willing to say that now.
Yeah.
Seeing if it gets broken, I'm not sure if I'm going to say that because because I don't know how the game's going to change.
Well, I'll bring that up in a minute, because one of the little games I wanted to play was who currently playing you think can reach 800. But
here, let me talk about Ovechkin for a minute, because I have covered him my entire career. Obviously, Kevin has. He's had a longer career. But when I first ran into him was at the 03 Stanley Cup. You were able to set up interviews with the prospects, and I got an exclusive with him. Although his English was very rough, he sat next to me in a booth in a restaurant, which is crazy, right? Because it's like if I try to sit next to Alex Ovechkin now, they'll drag me out. But it's just, I knew at that time that his parents were Olympic athletes. His mom was a basketball player. This was like a great bloodline that he had. And I also was worried when his first couple of years in the league, like, hey, look at him throwing his body around. Like, is he going to be able to last? But I do remember like that draft vividly because, you have him going first, Malcolm going second, and then the tremendous drop off of Cam Barker at third. Poor Cam Barker. But who could have been a good player, but he just wasn't. But that 1 and 2, that's going to go down as one of the best 1 and 2 in draft history. It is because, I knew that the Capitals were taking Ovechkin when I heard Ted Leonsis was learning Russian. But again, they're both Russian. But then you kept hearing these little leaks like Ted Leonsis really liked him to the point where he was going to make him the franchise. And I was impressed, like Leonsis said everything to him in Russian at the beginning, the way he welcomed him. It's just been a great match between him and that organization and that fan base.
Now, Kev, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think, it's interesting that Russ brought up that because I think that hurt his popularity early on. That, Russ was being kind. Like he really could not conduct, interviews early on. So it was hard to get to know him. It took several years, and it's only been, I would argue, since last 4 or 5 years when we've got a sense, like, now I know a lot more about Ovechkin, and a lot of it we've learned since he had a child. I mean, I think we understand now the passion he has for the sport based on, how he interacts on the ice with his son. We've seen videos, we've seen photos. We now have people talking about Ovechkin. Like I read this great story about Ovechkin likes to sing, and apparently he's pretty good. And, he sings on the team bus on the way to the rink. He sings in the dressing room, and guys say, he knows all popular tunes and things like that. Well, that's a part of him that it was hard for us to get to know for a lot of years. And I said, and I still believe this is true, we will appreciate him more after he's gone. Like he's not one of those guys that, as he's playing, his popularity is so immense. Like I think people respect what he's done, but they don't love him the way that probably they should, given the level that he's at. But he's been a remarkable player, and I think he's been an intriguing personality that we've really. And I don't think it's the media's fault either, because I think there was a language barrier for a lot of years. It's hard to get a read on a guy when he's unable to kind of show his personality through the use of his language.
He showed me once, his first time through Philly, Kev. He still did interviews even when his English was rough. But he told me that this kid over in the corner is booing him the whole game. And at the end of the game, he went and he gave him his stick and he goes, "Now I have a fan." And I got him at that point. Like that's when I really got him. I was like, okay, this guy gets it. I get it. So I had a little bit of sense of what he was about it when he told me that.
Yeah.
And on the negative side, and I saw a lot of chatter on Twitter after he scored yesterday, and there were some comments in the chat about not wanting Ovechkin to break the record because he's a supporter of Putin and the whole thing with Ukraine. Yeah. I mean, I'm not diminishing that, and like I'm not for anybody who supports Putin, but we're talking about an individual achievement that he's accomplished based on playing. What was he? 2004 draft, Russ? I mean,
2004.
18 years in the NHL. I don't care. Just like I don't care about the political affiliations of like singers that I listen to. I don't, unless it's something really ridiculous. I mean, this is the leader of Russia. Nobody really likes him, but I don't think it's a reason to slag on Ovechkin's legacy. I think if he breaks the record, he breaks the record. It shouldn't really matter.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult issue for some people, just because of kind of what's going on. But I don't know. We've reached the point now where we like and dislike athletes based on political affiliation and so forth. So I don't know what to say about that. You try to separate it.
Yeah, I'll go with this, Kev. Like back in the day, Joe Namath was my favorite player before, and this is before I knew about really a lot of stuff about him. I'm pretty sure we didn't line up politically, once I became of age. So it's like, if you're going to use that as the standard for everybody, then, you're never going to like any athlete.
Yeah.
Now, okay, a little game here before we move on, and also the thing I wanted to talk about 800. So of the 800 goals Ovechkin has scored, which franchise has he scored the most against? And I have to explain a little bit. Then this will give it away. But this franchise was in a different place when it started, when Ovechkin's career started.
I mean, I'll go.
Think of a team that's moved.
I know. I mean, sure, I'm going to say Winnipeg Jets.
Yes. So most of the goals.
That's the first one that came to mind because of Atlanta being so bad.
Yeah.
Most of the goals were with the Thrashers. 51 goals against that team. So, okay, of the teams that have not moved, this team in the Eastern, obviously it's Eastern Conference because he plays those teams more.
Right.
What team would you think?
I would say like the Devils or Flyers. So
the Devils are 9th with 38 goals.
Wow.
I'm going to say the Penguins.
The Penguins are 10th at 37 goals. Number 2 behind Winnipeg is the Tampa Bay Lightning, which I was a little surprised. Now they've had some dips, but they've also been one of the best teams in the league. I'll just give you the rest of the top 5. Carolina at 47, the Flyers at 46, Florida at 43. But Russ, I did a little calculation. I broke out my calculator. The team that he has scored the most goals in terms of goal percentage, goals per game, is the Toronto Maple Leafs.
I knew that was coming.
0.77 goals per game. Now, like Minnesota, he's played 19 games. He scored 17 goals, but that's because of the lower amount of games. But in terms of teams that have played him, say, over 40 games, he has scored 0.77 goals per game against Toronto.
Well, I'll tell you who has all those teams beat. Team Empty Net. Team Empty Net has them all beat.
Now, in terms of how many
goals?
Well, Jim Matheson had a retort to people who have made a big deal about that, pointing out how many empty net goals Wayne Gretzky had.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot. He doubles. Ovechkin. Yeah, it's not
he
even.
He didn't get to play 3-on-3 either, Gretzky. So, I mean, we have to say that too.
Yeah.
Now,
imagine Wayne Gretzky in 3-on-3.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. So,
just to illustrate your point, though, Russ, because I looked it up quickly because you said that tandem of Ovechkin and Malkin 1-2 might be the best first and second pick. You could make a case for Mario Lemieux and Kirk Muller, although Muller is not at the level of either one. But the one that might end up being that is McDavid and Eichel.
I don't think they'll hit that level.
Yeah, I don't either. But that's a good one. That's for sure. One. Yeah, but I'm with Russ. Those two players.
Russians. Like, again, when it happened, Kev, I don't know what your reaction, if you remember the reaction, but, like, this is an NHL draft that 2 Russians went 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Like, that's never happened since. It may never happen again.
Right.
I remember that people were writing that this was a draft where 2 potential Hall of Famers were going to be drafted 1 and 2, and that's exactly what's happened. So
now, in terms of, because right now I'd have to pull up the list of career goals currently, but you've got the 3, and I mean, I think a lot of people think Ovechkin is gonna reach Gretzky, and maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But are there any players that are currently playing right now that we think will have the longevity and the ability to get to 800? I mean, I don't know if we'll see it again, Kev. It's like 300 wins in hockey in baseball.
I mean, Russ's point is valid, where you can never say never just because you don't know what they'll do to the game and how they'll change it and so forth. But just based on the idea that, we're probably not ever going to return to the 1980s and 90s and not probably see too many players with Ovechkin's ability. I just don't see it happen. I looked at the number of goals that people had. I don't think Connor McDavid can do it.
No,
You
I
know,
don't think he can either.
yeah,
Well,
I mean, you'd end up having. I mean, what makes Ovechkin remarkable is that he's a 50-goal scorer at age 37.
7.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean that's I mean you just can't. And what he's done, like that was his 29th hat trick, which puts him in the top 6 in that category. He is now one of 3 players to have 18 or more 20 consecutive 20-goal seasons. The other 2 are Brendan Shanahan and Gordie Howe. And that's just hard to do, as because that means he's never really had a significant injury, one that took him at least, took out most of his season.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I think it's fair to argue you never say never, but I think it's going to be, 900 goals. You figure if you start at 18, so if you're a great player and you start at 18 and you go 22 years averaging 40 goals per season, which would be remarkable, you're still not there, to break.
I'm not telling
Here's what I would say, because I just looked it up, Mike. Like, let's say they take out one extra rule that we didn't see coming. Connor Bedard comes in the league. Right now, he's got 90 goals in 105 junior games. That's just goals. That's not points. That's just goals. Like, you never know. A guy like that with that tremendous speed, he gets the right partner. I can't say no.
I mean, this illustrates how the divide of Ovechkin from everybody else. The next closest active player is Sidney Crosby, who was drafted the draft after Ovechkin, but his birth date is in '87. He's played 1,137 games, and he has 266 goals behind Ovechkin. And this is a first ballot Hall of Famer who's won 3 Stanley Cups. So, I look at the list, and it's Crosby at 534, Stamkos, who's 32, who is going to reach 500 probably in the next couple weeks. He's at 497.
If he not had the injuries, Stamkos would have put a real close race to this, but now he won't be able to.
I mean, some people will make the case that maybe Matthews could, because he started scoring 40 goals at age 19, but he would have to do it for 20 years. So that's the mathematical just scratcher.
I mean, if Matthews could have a couple of
70 goals,
60 or 70,
yeah. I mean, that's where you could, maybe, and then kind of hang on. But it'll be interesting to see kind of what develops. I mean, scoring is on the rise this season. Could it creep up a little bit more? Maybe. I ended up having a conversation yesterday with Paul Woods, who is a former NHL player who's now a radio broadcaster, and he was just talking about, we think now that defense is so sophisticated, and that we overcoach defense. But he said he's noticed that one-on-one defensive play has slipped over the last few seasons. Like he said the other night he was watching a game on a 2-on-2 situation, and Connor McDavid left his man to help on the other man, and he goes, that's just defense 101. Like he said. And he said, I'm seeing that more often where they're breaking away from, strong defense just on the basis of instinct. And, he said, I just don't feel that the defense is, he said, I see a lot of more open ice than I saw a few years ago. So.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see more in the future. And that's the only reason I won't say no, just because
defense is a lot of work. And sometimes some of these players don't want it's easier to sort of drift away and do the instinctual thing. By the way, Matthews.
Look at the Flyers. I mean, they brought in John Tortorella, and their record's worse than last year. Why? Because it's harder to play his system and to devote yourself to his system than even last year for Mike Yeo, because some guys don't want to do it.
Matthews is 25. He scored 274 goals, so he'll reach 300 this year,
which is incredible, by the way.
So it's right. So he'll be at 26 to start next season, and he'll have to score at that level. Well, through another 7 years, 14. Yeah, I mean, he'd get to score that level for another 10 to 12 seasons.
Yeah, and just remember, like Stamkos was on that kind of pace too. Like he was going to be the youngest to ever get 500, and then all the stuff happened to him.
And all the injuries happened. Yeah, so
but that's part of it. You know what I mean?
It is. No, it is. It is a part.
So
of it.
I mean,
that's what I'm saying. We don't know what lies ahead for Matthews. Is my point.
Right.
Yeah.
the durability of Ovechkin is one of the most impressive things.
That's incredible.
Yeah, like it's robbed a lot of people of a lot of good years. So part of it getting that is, you just don't get those kind of injuries, which to me is just luck.
Now, touching on something we discussed yesterday, and Russ wasn't here. There was some further reporting, Kev, from Pierre LeBrun at the Board of Governors meeting that apparently he was told by 12 Board of Governor members that they were in favor and they were advocating the expansion of the playoff format. And obviously, like we discussed yesterday, I think it's a non-starter as long as Gary Bettman is commissioner. But if it gains momentum with the representatives of the teams, he is basically the advocate for those teams. And if they want it, he might have to go against that. But Russ, you didn't get a chance to chime in on the playoff.
Yeah, after I've had some time to soak this in, even though Gary may be against it today, those 12 owners might get together with some of the other owners and say, look, if we can't make more money and spend more money with the cap, like the cap's really only going to go up $1 million, and the playoffs may be the only way we get a $4 or $5 million jump in the cap. Why don't you guys jump along with the other 12, and then we'll meet with Gary again, and we'll say to him, you've got to do this because this is the only way to get us to advance the ball financially. And I think ultimately it's going to win out, because when I saw that Bettman had no interest in talking to the PA about negotiating this fact, whether it's going to go up a little bit more, even past $1 million, that let me know, okay, the owners are going to have to do what the NFL owners did. The NFL owners do a lot of things even the NHL owners don't do. The NFL owners really put their foot down when teams don't make money, and the NHL doesn't really do that, because even with Arizona, that team could not exist in the NFL the way they're financially driven. But I still think the playoffs is maybe the only way to get that cap to go up $4 or $5 million more.
Well, I do think he left it open for negotiation.
I did too. That's what I was going to ask Ross. I think I read that differently than you. I thought what was reported was he wouldn't say whether he was willing to negotiate with the Players Association.
Okay.
Which told me
quickly. Okay.
Yeah. So which told me, I think that there will be some discussion.
Okay.
But didn't you find it somewhat strange that NHL.com wrote a story, actually quoting Bill Daly as saying, not much has changed from October when Gary Bettman said that, it could be $4 million. I wouldn't assume there'd be any changes. Then all of a sudden we're only at the growth of 1 million. One thing Gary Bettman does better than most commissioners that have been in our lifetime is read his room. Yes. And he's like a good lawyer. Mm-hmm. He doesn't ask any questions that he doesn't already know the answer to. He had his ducks all lined up. Everybody in the league understands Gary's position, and you weren't on, Russ, but I think it's somewhat ironic because the criticism of Gary through the years is he's been too much of how we're going to increase growth, and now he takes a position based on what we can say is principle. He doesn't think that we should mess with this great system of 16 teams that gets in and all that. And knowing, he's admitted to me, he knows how much money it'll make.
Right.
Now he's being criticized for that. So if he does sense at some point that he's lost the room, he will capitulate. But
don't you feel like, Kev, if let's say all this is talk, they negotiate, but the cap only goes up $1.5 million, don't you think the owners will then put pressure on Bettman to do this for the playoffs for more money on the cap?
Yeah, but it's hard. You really got to gain a lot of money to move the needle on the cap.
I know.
That's the problem. And if they're willing to do it, we talked about this yesterday. I think they should only do an 8 and 9 play-in.
Right.
Now, some people think it should be, kind of a tournament, as Mike pointed out.
7 through 10, 8 through 9.
Right. Yeah. I think that's too much, but I think you should experiment. You should try it and see how we like it, because I think it'll go crazy. I think
there's additional advertising that comes along with that.
No, it does for sure. So, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, the growth in revenue this year, again, there, in October, he said, we were going to go over $6 billion. So it's not like they're not growing. They are growing, but
let's just think about this rationally. Let's take what Gary thinks about Arizona out of it. Like, there are two or three franchises that are really holding this league back as far as what it really could do financially, and Florida and Arizona are two of them for sure.
Mm-hmm. And two of the biggest profitable franchises are Vegas and Seattle, the two teams that just came in.
Yeah.
Now maybe that's understandable because they're new markets and it's a new shiny toy, but I mean, I get the feeling that maybe the perception will be that he'll be dragged kicking and screaming into this within a couple years. No, I don't think this is a good idea, but I'll do it because the owners want to do it. Baloney. I think he wants to make as much money for the teams as he possibly can, and it's like,
and his salary is going to go up too. Let's not be unrealistic about this.
Yeah, he's 70 years old. I don't think he's quite worried about how much.
I don't know.
He doesn't protest too much.
I don't know. I mean, for what I've seen for people who have money they don't seem to mind making more. And so
I don't think he would mind. I'm sure he'll try to get everything, but I don't think that's a driving force for him.
It may not be a driving force, but it will be a fact. The same as Roger Goodell's salary keeps going up. His will go up too.
What I would predict that just based on knowing him and having had some conversations, I don't think that he has any plans to retire before age 75.
Why would you?
It seems like you're right about that. I agree with you.
Why would you? It's like you get to fly to Arizona and talk and and do the thing that he did for the Coyotes. He goes to Europe for. It's a great job. I mean,
he'll be at the
he enjoys
he enjoys it. Like, I'm going to tell you, the best thing Gary Bettman does all year is his press conference before the Winter Classic. That is the one that everybody wants to be at. Like, a lot of times you're busy. Sometimes you don't hang out for all of Gary's press conferences, like at the All-Star game or whatever. But the one at the Winter Classic is so well attended. Like, I can't tell you how many people are at that every time.
Okay, talking about some of the games last night, and I won't waste time talking about the Leafs because they even though Russ was making fun of me because I was expecting the Leafs to not show up against one of the teams' worst records in the NHL because they've done that.
It's hard to not show up against a substandard team. That was my thinking.
Well, but okay, and this is the thing. And I respect Dave Poulin a lot. I love his point of view on TSN. And he said, well, the Leafs are past this. They're a good team, and they're not going to not show up against one of the worst teams in the league. Dave, they didn't show up in late October against San Jose and Anaheim. They lost to both of them. So that's not in the past. But they killed the Anaheim Ducks 7-0 last night. They didn't take them for granted. But Kev, you mentioned this early in the year. Anaheim, woof. Oh my God, they're so bad.
Yep. No, they're really bad. And it's been a lot of factors. But some of it is, I think Pat Verbeek is more than willing, just like Steve Yzerman, just to let things be. He could fix things if he wanted to. I mean, he could put patches on them and make them more competitive, but I don't think he's going to do that.
No. I mean, Dallas. He said on a podcast apparently that Dallas. He made a promise, or he made the decision of sticking with Dallas Eakins for the entire season. Well, he's a lame duck. His contract is up at the end of the year. And there's a pot at the end of the rainbow named Bedard. So of course you're not
doing it. The season ends, they're already going to name a different coach.
Yeah, but you're doing it again, Mike. What the GM reminded me of. He goes, we don't. It's not Bedard. We're trying to get one of them top players.
Right.
He said, you guys do us more disservice because fans start thinking that there's a realistic chance of getting it.
It's really true. If you do speak to GMs, none of them ever think they're going to get.
No, I know. It's only the media.
It's Bedard. It's Fantilli. I heard it's Mishkov. Russ, I heard a new name, Leo Carlson.
Carlson's not a new name. He's in there.
Well, for me, it's a new name because I'm not a draft guy, but you are, so I know you know who he is. But yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely like get one of those top 4 pick. But I mean, it's going to get worse, Kev, because they're going to trade Klingberg, they're going to trade Shattenkirk, they're going to trade Kulikov, they're going to trade anything that's not nailed down, and they should. But boy, I mean, and the guy I feel the most for, and we've had this argument before, but John Gibson, he played great for a period and a half and then got hurt and left the game. And it's like a shooting gallery. This guy, if he has to preserve his career, get the hell out of there. But if he likes playing in Southern California,
yeah. Well, you got to wonder whether he'll change on that too. He's been pretty clear that he has not asked for a trade, that he likes it there. And to be honest, I thought they had the ingredients there that they could be somewhat competitive. But it was pretty clear at the start of the season that that's not the way Pat Verbeek was thinking.
But and Lucas Dostal's a pretty good goalie too. Someday he'll be a decent goalie in the league. Here's what I think though that could speed things up for them, and this is another reason why I think Verbeek's willing to do this year. They still have Drysdale. Fowler's only 31. Like they have some guys on defense that are definitely going to still be good and get better. And it's not like they have to build their whole defense up. They don't.
Yeah.
And they'll have money on the cap that they can go out and get a premier defenseman to kind of glue that together. Like I think he could do a 2-year patch on this and getting a top pick this year and be back, somewhat competitive, maybe even really competitive.
I saw Drysdale before he got hurt. And I was kind of shocked, to be honest, that he has not made more strides. And I talked to in some pro scouts on Press Row about that, and they have said that he has not made nearly the progress, if any, that was expected. Like there's been a huge disappointment that he has just not progressed.
Okay, but he's young. I mean, he's got age.
Well, he is young, but he's, he's played a lot, and he just, he said, he's making the same mistakes he made, before, and he's not creating any offense, so I think that he is young, and when you start him as young as he did, there's going to be a lot more bumps. And what did they say about defensemen? 200 games,
right.
So.
And
but remember, he's out with a shoulder injury, so he's really not coming back this year.
No.
So that's so next year maybe he comes in there and at 21 looks a little better, but they're not bereft on defense. That's just my whole thing is they still have some guys there, and that's why I think they can do all these things that you're talking about, Mike, and in a couple of years be back at it.
Yeah,
how many games has Drysdale actually played? I'm looking at it.
I'll check, but Gordon
90 something.
Yeah, Gordon Miller made the point on the broadcast last night that, obviously you want him in the lineup and you don't want him injured, but, this is an opportunity with a team that it's not going anywhere for him to make the mistakes and learn from them and grow.
Well, 113, because I forgot about the 20 games in 2021.
Yeah, so a full season next year he'll then be at 200, and
yeah, you got to be over 150 games so you really have an idea of what.
Well, and it's not like he's done nothing. He had 32 points last year, so
right, sure.
But I just think that they've been disappointed in.
It's the defensive end of his game, Kev, that really needs to improve.
Right.
Maybe he needs to get stronger. He needs to be. I mean, he's got great offensive instincts. We've all seen it.
He's a great skater. He's a very good skater.
Yeah.
Now, one of the other games last night was Edmonton beating the Nashville Predators 6-3. And as usual, when McDavid and Draisaitl are going, that team is going to win. And Zach Hyman had a hat trick. But I want to talk about Nashville because I heard Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick talk about the Predators, who right now are 500, 12-3. And there's a lot of discontent in Nashville, which has been a pretty good NHL market for all the time that it's been there, Kev, and that there's a level of frustration. There was that last year, and they made the playoffs, and they signed Forsberg, but that it's sort of now starting to bubble up to the surface that, some of the fans are really getting frustrated with where this organization is. And last year they put that aside because Johansson and Duchesne and Forsberg all had good years, and Saros did as well. He's a finalist for the Vezina, but that's not happening this year, at least not yet, and they're struggling.
Yeah, And I've talked about this before, but Nashville's a unique franchise in that there's genuine concern, despite the fact that people are enthusiastic about this franchise around the league. And we've seen the excitement level of the playoffs, but there's a fear that if they miss the playoffs, like a lot of teams would be willing to embrace a rebuild because they have confidence in their ability to hold their season tickets. Nashville is not among them. They're fearful if they don't make the playoffs that you could see a dramatic drop in their ticket sales. That these fans, as much as they enjoy hockey, they've got other things to do. So you got to be somewhat successful. So I think there's some worry there, and I wonder too. David Poyle's been a long time. I think he knows what he's doing, but there's some staleness there, and with new ownership aboard, and I think it works that he gets more and more ownership as time wears on. I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of change things up there. Maybe after this season.
Well, here's the interesting thing too. So I noticed that just recently, Askarov's starting to play better, and you got 2 more years with Saros. There might be a year where Saros, is a $5 million backup. Like they may just be stuck with that 1 year because this is his worst year statistically that he's had.
Well, Russ, I mean, with the dearth of goaltending out there, I mean, at $5 million, if there's a team out there that's looking for a starter, that might be somebody that other than Gibson, like who are the goalies that are under contract that teams would be looking for as a potential starter? If they're, like Buffalo is going to be looking for a starter. Devin Levi is a year or two at least away. Craig Anderson's 41 years old, and Eric Comrie is a backup. If the Buffalo Sabres are out there looking for a starting goaltender, Saros might be they might be able to get a value for Saros. I mean, there are other teams.
I don't know if they can get that much value, but like Askarov right now is at a 918, right? If he has a good full season in the AHL and Saros has this off year, he's going to challenge for a job.
I mean, Kevin, don't you think that if a team out there is needing a starting goaltender, and you're talking about a guy who is small, we get that, but he was a finalist for the Vezina, and he's not I think at least he's an above average goaltender. I know Russ has never been a believer in Saros, but I think they could get something substantial.
Yeah, I don't think they're in a hurry to trade him either.
No.
That's my impression. So I think that they think it's a team issue, not a goaltending issue. So
yeah, I mean, right now, Russ, I wanted to get your thoughts because we talked about it yesterday on the announcement about Horvat. He put out a statement yesterday saying that he's not going to discuss his contract situation for the rest of the year. That's not going to stop Vancouver media from asking.
No. They'll talk about it every day.
But essentially, he's going to try to do his best to help Vancouver get wherever. Blah blah blah. I mean, it's basically. I'm not talking about contract anymore. Now, I personally think that he's done. He's gone, and they better trade him to get something for him. But who knows?
I thought they would get one more shot at him, and I think based on that statement, they're not. And so I do think they have to trade him at the deadline. Like I don't think they have a choice, or before the deadline. Like if there's a team that's really hot on the trail for him now, I think you got to make the deal because. Regardless if Vancouver has a chance of making the playoffs or not, you have to get something for this guy having a career year. You can't just ride it out. Even if it means losing some playoff revenue, it will kill you if you lose Bo Horvat for nothing. Like this team cannot handle that. They're not deep enough to handle that.
Yeah, I mean, there was last night at the rink, I had gotten into a discussion with folks, and there had been a rumor floating around that Colorado Avalanche were going pretty hard at him, and the first round pick, the young, one of their younger players would be the deal. But there's thoughts out there that Vancouver wants a center, which is going to make it difficult for them.
That's going to make it harder. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think they might have to back off on that just because those are in such demand, and no one's giving up a young player. To get a rental. So
the player that I heard would be the centerpiece in a deal for Horvat was one that Russ discussed a couple days ago, and he's from Cranbrook, BC, and that's Bowen Byram.
Yeah.
And if you look at Vancouver, I mean, they need help on defense badly.
Yeah, they do. They do. That's what I'm saying. They may, back off on that, but we'll see. So
Yeah. All right. Great
The
show,
only
guys.
guy I can come up with,
Go ahead,
just
go ahead.
because it just came to mind, if Vancouver thought that they could play Gabe Velarde at center, that's a guy they could get who's having a really good year and obviously more, but he could be a guy that maybe fits the bill in that deal where there's going to be like another prospect and a pick.
The only thing I think Vancouver would be fearful of, I mean, I don't know if the Horvat would sign with the Kings after getting traded, but having him come into the building and being in your division after being your captain, that's something that wouldn't concern me, but it might concern the Aquilinis because I think they think irrationally when it comes to their players most of the time. So
yeah, I don't think the Kings would make that deal.
I don't think so either.
They might not.
Yeah. I just don't see that happening. So,
okay. Great show, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.